answer the question. If I had to choose one of them, I would probably go sensory motor. Because that's closest to what I feel really, really works. It's focused, and the language that Sue used was almost identical to the language I use with clients. It's a slightly different way of working, but I would send them sensory motor.
Mark, you said something that caught my ear, which was there's an evolutionary instinct to heal. And I think that resonated through some of the other speakers' contributions. So I'm wondering about what sense you make of that. Is there an evolutionary instinct to heal? And how would you paraphrase that within your own thinking, your own paradigm?
Very briefly, just to clarify that, has anybody ever injured themselves? Ever? Like broken a leg, fallen off a bike, grazed themselves, cut themselves in their kitchen. What happened? It hurt. Clean the wound out. What happened? It healed. Who healed it? The question is there an evolutionary instinct to heal?
But I'm interested in the others picking this question up. Yeah, it's about how does it find its way in your thinking, Barbara, in your thinking, Sue. Donna, is it available? Is this a thought that's been available to you and to Lennox? This.
Yes, I think on the. I use the word soul a lot. On the soul level, definitely. There's a very natural instinct towards healing, and I think that's what brings people to whichever discipline they go for. Mm-hmm. But I also think running parallel to that can be a resistance to healing, because one of the things that can happen is that we rely on our ailments and our difficulties as our identity, as who we are. Mm. And I have met people that cannot align themselves to having healed something. They feel a stronger pull to return to what's familiar to them. Because it's very scary. Sometimes healing requires us to take action that might be really difficult, like leaving a marriage, for instance. Or we have to move away from somewhere or something like that, or we have to acknowledge that we've been doing something that's been maybe not in our own interest for an awful long time. So we have to face up to ourselves in that sense. So I do see that as well, but I think on the deeper level, on a soul level, I'm sticking with that word, on a soul level, there's a really deep instinct in the body as well towards healing. And
yeah, Barbara, can I pick you up on that word soul? Because there was a question from someone, a group, about what does Barbara mean by soul?
That indefinable, it's hard to define, but I feel it, which is why I wanted to show those two films. For me, those two films touch my soul, and I didn't know, how was I going to get across in 25 minutes to you what the essence of constellation work is about. For me, it's about soul, and those two films can do that for me. So my hope was that those two films would touch you in your soul in a way that talking about the work wouldn't be able to do in 25 minutes. If I had longer and I could do more experiential work with you, then we probably could get to that place together, but with a short amount of time, that for me is what soul, and if I wanted to define it in a different way, it's right brain, it's the body, it's the alignment of all of those things. And it's become a word that's, for a lot of people difficult for them to align themselves with because of its connection to all kinds of religions and dogma. And I want to bring it back because I think it's a beautiful word and has very strong resonance for me. And I think most of us who are therapists work in a soulful way, whether we acknowledge it or not.
Yeah, so I wonder if you think it's possible to not believe in soul and yet to be soulful.
No, I don't. I think we can say we don't believe in soul, but actually if we're soulful, we do believe in soul. Yeah.
I think the problem of religious language is difficult for us a lot of times, but I'm grateful to you for being unafraid. And I would like to say that part of what you heard from me this morning is not about how to work, but why to do it. And the sense of our work as vocational. And when we think of our work as humanitarian work as a vocation, as something to which we are called and to which we have responsibility that comes from who knows where. We're in the same ballpark that you're talking about. We don't have the right language for it. We're afraid of religious language, and I am as afraid as anyone. So we're just skirting around the edges of it. But our work is hard and difficult enough that we need the support of trying to find some kind of language and without being too critical of each other about the ways we try to find the language and admitting that we don't really have quite the right language all the time. Anyway, you want to say something?
I was thinking of the phrase "only connect," and if you think that trauma and attachment injuries sever and cut, so I guess I believe that through connecting to another person, through connecting in a deeper way to yourself, through connecting to nature, through connecting to something spiritual, neuroscience, connecting different layers of the brain, but something that's going to create a climate in which somebody can reconnect, and then healing will come.
The question was about this belief in some evolutionary process, of healing.
Yes, you know, Darwin's original idea was that the instinct was to struggle, and that was the fundamental instinct. But you're talking about an instinct toward wholeness, which was Freud's second idea of eros, which is some bringing together, which is like healing. And so, and more recent evolutionary biology says that cooperation is a more powerful evolutionary factor than struggle. So what you're saying actually goes with more recent evolutionary theory.
The instinct to heal, I see as something profoundly biological. I think in behavioural terms there are interesting debates to be had about conflict and survival in opposition to other groups, other species, ants fight each other in the different colonies, but they cooperate within the ant heap. My understanding of healing in an EMDR context is that it is the analogy with the physical healing, that just as all of us have had difficult times when we've fallen off a bike and broken a leg or so, what you have to do is put the bone back together again, make sure the wound is kept free of infection and wrap it up, and it heals because it's programmed by evolution to, by billions of years to heal. And the astonishing thing that happens in EMDR, this is the sort of the magic of it, is that when you really focus in a trauma-focused way, in the context of a safe relationship, on the wound, there is a kind of extraordinary, natural, automatic process that we observe again and again with clients. We're talking with a number of fellow EMDR practitioners in the breaks, and we all have the same experience. That if you really go in there with this laser, this isn't because of the theory, this is because this is how we're built as Homo sapiens, as mammals. And as the narrative, as the thoughts and the feelings and the physical emotions come out of the wound, from the deepest wound, it heals. And suddenly you'll get, almost from one moment to the next sometimes, certainly from one session to the next, it's gone. Just like a physical wound, you wake up one morning and you're well again. Many of you who've had an operation, there's a point at which I'm okay again now. You're sick, and then you're not sick. And it happens at a psychological level, because the psychology is built from the building blocks of us, in the same way as we are built physically. So I think it's just built in.
But so I'm interested in that, but I'm also interested in the psychic and cultural phenomena of denial. So taking the examples that Lennox put forward about slavery, or taking issues to do with the atrocities that occur in human rights situations. Now, there's a huge amount of denial that goes on. We call it gaze aversion. We didn't see that happen. It doesn't become integrated into our cultures. So where does that fit with this evolutionary pressure to heal? And also picking up on culture, being wired for culture, and that new sense among evolutionists of when we got wired for culture, then our evolution leapt forward. Yeah. How does that fit with denial and human rights abuses, the stuff that we can't bear to bring our attention to many times?
For me, one of the ways that denial comes out in a constellation is you can see it when people are not looking at a particular person or a particular event. So we may have set up something to represent the war, for instance, or someone to represent the war, and say the person, the father who was the soldier in the war, turns his back on it. So you see it as an image, and that's where the denial will be. And one of the beautiful things with constellation work is that if the person is able to turn around and face the war, then it shifts something. And they may feel an awful lot of feelings, and the person sitting in the seat, the client, will also feel something in resonance with that. So that's how I would see that. And the thing about culture for me, I can't remember exactly what your question was, but one of the groundbreaking ideas that Bert Hellinger, who I never even mentioned in my talk, who's the founder of Constellation Work, came up with was the idea of belonging and what we have to give up in order to belong from our soul. And culture is part of that. And if we stand against the culture, we risk being excommunicated, thrown out of our culture. So some of the atrocities in the world are committed out of a need to belong and a sense of the group that we belong in is doing the right thing in relation to other things, because to challenge that would mean death. And so the loyalty to the group, whichever that group is, whether it's, I can't think of the name of the Al-Qaeda, or whoever, is the need to belong is stronger than anything else, and the loyalty to them is anything else, and the atrocities come out of that place for me. So I don't know how that connects to the evolutionary. I didn't quite understand that bit.
Yeah, denial and the cultural issues around that, and I think a lot of it is to do with, I had it in my head a minute ago, with pride, power and shame. A lot of it is socially constructed. People with the power can have the pride. People in the minority will bear the shame and probably aren't even allowed to draw attention to their minority position or their subjugation. And the powerful actually don't allow them to do that until they define it themselves. And we've had some social movements in our society, the kind of women's movement, the civil rights movement, the gay liberation movement, which have actually said, look, we're here, and we're going to have a voice and we're going to have some power about it. And then the rest of society has had to claim and own back their oppression, and actually allow these people to take place in our society and not bear all that shame by their minority subjugated position. It's a huge dynamic issue, and it's probably worth another whole conference. But I'll talk to you about it for a few minutes.
Anyone else like a crack at that question? No? Should we move on?
Oh,
Donna?
it's just that it's not always conscious denial. It's a kind of it's another version of unconsciousness that we're very unaware of our if we are in the majority of our privilege, of the way that our comfortable life is built, upon, for example, in our country, on the legacy of slavery, on the legacy of colonialism and the destruction of our indigenous peoples. And we just go along our merry way as if we are entitled to live the way we do. Denial is not quite the right word. It's a sort of organized blindness.
I think my response to that is that I believe we keep needing to work on ourselves.
Yes.
Because moment by moment there will be things we don't want to know, and a part of our brain knows and a part of it doesn't want to know, and it's encountering those and having to face them that also helps make a difference.
Picking up the denial and the sort of the group thinking again, I'm very aware, as I've been talking about the triggering the instinct to heal of the individual who's sitting in front of me in the consulting room. It's a very different story if we take us all as a collective. I am fairly obsessed about climate change and the science of what we are doing and what we have done, and I think that's irreversible. I think we're heading for spectacularly difficult times. I suspect many of us in the room would share that opinion. So as a group, in terms of denial about what we're actually, where we are unhealed and are inflicting the most unspeakable damage on the non-human world, as well as on each other at times. There is a massive disconnect between these two. So are we in denial as a species? Oh boy, are we in denial. 52% you read last week of wild animals on the planet have gone in the last 40 years. I mean, when human civilization is not going to survive for the next few decades, I'm fairly I'm personally completely certain of that. And yet when I sit with one individual, with one family system, with one complex internal system that is sitting with me, working on that one individual's healing, then amazing things can happen. Maybe that'll make a difference to the collective. I fear it won't, having lived in many different parts of the world and seen how we work as a group. I think there's a huge disconnect between the two.
Lennox, can you remind me what Donald Winnicott's wife was called?
Claire.
Claire. So Donald Winnicott apparently stole Claire Winnicott's idea about...
I think she gave it to
She gave it to her. I think the word you used was purloin, which is a very beautiful word. Yeah. Well, we spend our lives purloining each other's ideas, and I'm wondering, among the five of you, if you had to purloin one idea or way from your five colleagues, which one would you purloin?
only one.
Only one. But transitional objects is a big idea, isn't it? I mean, within it, it's so rich, isn't it? Yeah, there's layers there. So, yeah, it can be a big idea. Yeah.
Well, I think I'll play my hand very quickly.
You play yours.
I'll play my hand very quickly. I think that I would actually want to purloin more than one idea about family constellations, which I've already done a workshop on and I'm already half sold on anyway.
And I can't purloin from you because
We're the same anyway.
we're twins already, so. Yes, I too am very taken with your family constellation business. I don't think I would use it literally the way you do, but you've given me something really to think about. I can't purloin from Sue because her work is already embedded in mine, just in an implicit way. And I'm going to think more about using some of your, I'm going to use it on myself, actually, is what I'm going to do. This way. I'm going to see it, I'm going to steal that for myself.
I think probably, given also that I actually obviously use a huge amount of what we've been talking about, what each one of us has been talking about today. I think the bit that's new for me, perhaps, having done family constellations and experienced its power, is how to bring into my work a rather more explicit awareness of the transpersonal, the collective, the energy that's in the field, the presence of the ancestors. I actually had a client the other day where I did a sort of bilateral stimulation. The buzzers were going, and we took her in to meet her grandfather. And it was almost like a piece of constellation work. It was fantastically powerful. I mean, we were both blown away by what happened and by the wisdom. Her grandfather absolutely had the wisdom for her, and she'd been sitting with this, waiting for this moment for 40 years. But I love the idea of the physical placing of the different individuals, and I might use that with my couple's work, for example. So I think that's the bit extra. The sensory and motor stuff, we speak the same language anyway, so that's it. We've got two sets of twins. Actually got twin children.
Yes, I'm also drawn to some of the things that you've been saying. And I think there is a strand that's emerging about also thinking about what's transmitted transgenerationally, but it's so implicit. And I'd like to know more about Lennox's some of the theories that you were mentioning in terms of transmission of post-traumatic. Yeah. So certainly, I just want to take that other dimension a bit further in my thinking.
I'd be unlikely to purloin until I found out a little bit more. But I would certainly do more inquiring into EMDR. I'd like to find out more about it. As an extra kind of tool to use, perhaps within the constellation work. And I have heard about sensory motor psychotherapy, and I am interested in that. And I can see some places that are new for me. So yes, I would like to find out more about that. So that would be wouldn't be purloining, it would be, let me find out more first and then I'll see if I want to purloin or not.
It's possible to have the sense when, with a patient who's been through the most remarkable abuse, to have a sense of something really representative going on between oneself and them. Yeah, that one is representing one pole, and there's something perhaps almost of the oceanic that takes place in that. There's a sense of participation in something greater than one is. And I'm sort of turning to that remark that you made, Donna, which I think came out of Levinas and Dostoevsky, where you said, I am responsible for all before everything. And I'm wondering if you could add a little bit around that. And the question for everyone else is, does that resonate for you in your